Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another video for the Film Chronicles. In today's video, the topic of discussion is going to be reboots. Reboots that worked, that didn't work, and also some reboots that could potentially work. Now, I'm not going to cover every reboot that ever got made or greenlit and that actually worked. I'm just going to be kind of picking some favorites of mine, as well as the most notable ones that did not end up working very well. Of course, friendly reminder for you guys to make sure you guys are hitting that like button if you're new to the channel. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe and then turn on that notification bell, and of course leave your comments for me to read and to reply to. So let's get into this. So reboots are definitely something that is viewed in a negative light, because I think we have some reboots that really did shit on movie franchises as a whole and really didn't respect where they came from. I think there's a lot of bad reboots or retries, I guess we can say too, for franchises. I think, you know, a lot of them missed the mark. I think a lot of them really didn't take the time to, you know, digest the material that they had in front of them and really kind of try to make something special again. But then on the other hand, you know, there are quite a handful of reboots that did wonders for the franchises and really rejuvenated, you know, movies and movie characters that, you know, that we potentially could not have seen unless it wasn't for these reboots. So I do definitely think there is a lot more to love about reboots than to hate. But although, I mean, it's about 50-50 as far as, you know, which ones are good and which ones really aren't good and really leave a bad taste in your mouth. So I'll kind of go over some that I noticed that really did work, and for me personally really did capture what a reboot's supposed to be. You're supposed to inject life into the dying franchise or into a movie that didn't get its, you know, paid due from the crew behind it, and so on and so forth, or, you know, they had a lot of studio interference and such. So right off the bat, I'm going to start off with 1999's The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. This is a reboot of the same film from 1932 starring the infamous horror icon Boris Karloff. And I think that The Mummy, the 1999 version, really successfully rebooted the franchise. You got the injection of action adventure, reminding a lot of people of, you know, early Indiana Jones movies and, you know, other action adventure movies from Spielberg and from other directors, you know, that are in that same realm. And then, of course, you have the cast. The cast is great. Like I said, Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, John Hannah, Kevin J. O'Connor, and Arnold Vosloo as, you know, Imhotep. And I think this cast works, and I think the set is great. I think that they really did capture that action adventure tone for the movie while also injecting a lot of horror elements. And I think that the 1999 Mummy definitely has a lot of good horror sections in it. And don't forget about the rewatchability factor. I mean, this movie comes from 1999. That's about 23 years ago, guys. And this movie still is a great, fun action-adventure film to watch. You know? So I think that The Mummy from 1999 is a very successful reboot. It spawned the sequel, The Mummy 2, The Scorpion King, which also spawned a spin-off, The Scorpion King with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, which also did really good. I think that where the franchise got a little silly is just after some studio interference and meddling with the third film, and, you know, the choice to cast a different Evie and, you know, not have an actual mummy. I think that really hurt that third film. But overall, I mean, The Mummy and The Mummy Scorpion King, definitely rewatchable films. Definitely a great example of a successful rebooted franchise. So the next successful rebooted franchise, I would have to say, is going to be the Dark Knight trilogy from Christopher Nolan. You know, very successful Batman trilogy. And I think it is one of the better Batman films, some of the better Batman films, I should say, to come out, especially after the fact that we had Batman and Batman Returns with Michael Keaton being such successful and awesome takes on Batman, and then you go into Batman Forever and then Batman and Robin, with both films leaving such a bad taste in fans and critics' mouths that, you know, Batman was not in the cards. It wasn't a playable option anymore. And so for a while there was a lot of uncertainty whether we would see the Batman on the silver screen again, and that was until Christopher Nolan came and cracked the code with the Dark Knight trilogy, successfully getting a great Batman, doing a more serious, grounded take on the character while also respecting the character and respecting very crucial storylines for Batman. I think that Batman Begins is a very solid first entry. Of course, The Dark Knight, the sequel, is such a great film and such an awesome casting as far as the Joker. It's very iconic too. I mean, I think it was definitely a Joker that a lot of people will remember for a long time to come. And then it capped off with The Dark Knight Rises. I think I had my own personal gripes with the film, but overall, looking at it as an overall conclusion, I think it's a fucking awesome. And I think Bane was a genius casting in the form of Tom Hardy, and not only that, this take on Bane is one of my more preferred takes on Bane. I love the militancy. I love the fact that there's, not this crazy giant man who's just, going off of a toxic serum. I think that is pretty cool, and I do like some of the grounded elements in this film, although some of them kind of take themselves too seriously, and I think that kind of had a negative effect on the trilogy. But overall, I mean, the success is on the wall. I mean, I don't even have to explain how successful this franchise was for you. Not only that, but once this ended, this gave us, room for more. This made people want more Batman, and we did get more Batman in the form of Zack Snyder's take with Ben Affleck, which I think is one of the more underrated takes on Batman. Definitely my number 2 as far as Batman go. And then, now with the current The Batman that came out, I mean, if it wasn't for, the TDK trilogy, I don't think we would have this want and need for more and better Batman movies. Sitting right there at number 3 for me would have to be Mad Max Fury Road. I wasn't too big of a fan of the first few Mad Max films, although Mad Max, the first one, is great. I think number 2 is also pretty good. I didn't really care for Beyond Thunderdome. But back to Fury Road. I think Fury Road is such a successful reboot and re-injection of the franchise into our veins. A lot of the practical effects, a lot of the practical set pieces, and also both the actor and actresses in the film. I mean, Charlize Theron, you got Tom Hardy, and pretty much a non-speaking role, is still able to act his ass off more than most actors who do get speaking roles. I think that the film was just fucking awesome. It felt so alive. It felt like a real tangible environment and universe, and I just loved it. And it's so successful that we're not only getting a spin-off about Furiosa, but we're also getting a sequel to the Fury Road called Mad Max Wasteland. So I think that's pretty awesome. I think that the film is definitely one of the better films of recent years too. Just the color palette, the visuals, and again, the story and some of the emotional beats in the film really do work wonders. Coming in at number 4 for me is going to have to be Spider-Man Homecoming. Yes, this is a reboot, although I guess you could technically say that Civil War was the one that gave us the rebooted version. But nonetheless, the film itself did rejuvenate the franchise. And I think that if you have your doubts and your qualms about Spider-Man Homecoming, they're kind of stupid. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think the complaint about Iron Boy Jr. is very overplayed, and you're pretty much just saying that to be edgy. Yeah, it's something that pops up on Instagram, TikToks, and memes and Reddit and shit like that. So don't regurgitate bullshit. I don't think that trope is actually a big deal in this movie. It makes sense for this film and for this version of Spider-Man. Nonetheless, though, Spider-Man Homecoming really did successful. I mean, it had great villains, it had a great story, and then we got the sequel, Spider-Man Far From Home, and of course the recent Spider-Man No Way Home. And I think that overall the trilogy excels. It's so successful, and this is definitely one of the more proven successful reboots. So there's that. Coming in at number 5, I'm going to have to go with Rise of the Planet of the Apes trilogy. This is the prequel trilogy for Planet of the Apes, directed and written mostly by Matt Reeves, who you guys know now as the director of The Batman, since a lot of you probably aren't familiar or don't even really have any fucking clue who Matt Reeves is. Rise of the Planet of the Apes proves that you can do a great prequel trilogy without really stepping on what was already done with the current slate of movies, and I think that going at a prequel angle is smart and can really work out if you play your cards right. And I think that these 3 films in this trilogy, the Rise trilogy is what they're calling it as, I think they all work very well and they all flow together very beautifully, and I think they're one of the better films to come out between the time span of 2011 and I think 2015, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 2016, but all 3 movies came out in between 2011 and 2016. So that'll be it for my top 5 picks. I do have some honorable mentions here on my list. I'm going to put down Evil Dead, Dread with Carl Urban from 2013, the Halloween franchise recently, and Bumblebee. I think those 3 movies are definitive good choices for reboots. They just didn't make my list because while Dread didn't really get a sequel, Evil Dead didn't really get a sequel, and Halloween did get a sequel, which I thought was pretty good, but it had some mixed reception, and some of it, now that I'm thinking about it, I've had time to come to the conclusion that there's some things I don't like in Halloween Kills. So there's that. So now on to my top picks for reboots that did not work at rebooting the franchise that they were supposed to really reboot. My number one pick is gonna have to be 2009's Friday the 13th, produced by Michael Bay, directed by Marcus Nispel, who was very successful in rebooting the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 2003, but I think his style and his flavor really died out with this movie. I think it's a very bad take on Friday the 13th. I think it focuses too much on other irrelevant shit that has nothing to do with Jason Voorhees. I think that overall they could have spent a little more time with Jason rather than the characters that I really care nothing about, because they're such pieces of shit that I don't really want to see them on film, and that would be the main cast of those college kids. I really don't care. Like, it was not a great film. It's rewatchable, sure, but only because I love Jason Voorhees, so I'm gonna watch almost all the movies that he's in, all the Friday 13th, whether they're bad or not, even such as Jason X, right? That one was the fucking worst. But anyway, that's my number one pick. Going into number two, it has to be A Nightmare on Elm Street. Again, another failed attempt to reboot a classic icon. I think that sucks. I think that, coming off of just Texas Chainsaw Massacre, failing at Jason Voorhees, and also failing with Freddy Krueger, there's something going wrong there with that production company. So I'm glad that after A Nightmare on Elm Street that they stopped trying to do this with the current producers and directors that they had, because it just wasn't working, and it was almost spitting in the face of the lore and the other films that came before it. So I'm glad that they stopped. And again, like I said with the honorable mentions earlier, that Halloween 2018 Halloween was really a successful rebooted version of the film, and it played a lot of its cards right. And I think that these films, now that we're looking back on it, I think they should take a lot of information from how successful the new Halloween really is. So coming in at number three, I would have to pick Terminator Genisys. You have Terminator 1 and 2, some of the best films of all time, and then you have Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, which wasn't that great, and then you go into Salvation, again, not that great, but just not great enough. And then after that, they try to come in with Terminator Genisys, which again is another film that just spits in the face of the lore and the characters that were established beforehand. And I think that was just a really half-cooked take on the Terminator franchise as a whole. And that spun a sequel, Terminator Dark Fate. I'm sorry, it's not even a sequel. It's like another rebooted attempt. Two rebooted attempts in the same franchise within years of one another. I think that's insane. So that's going to be my number three pick. I think that it's so bad. My number four pick is going to have to be 2015's Fantastic Four, directed by Josh Trank, with a great cast and also a great first 40 minutes of a film that I've ever seen on film for a superhero movie. I think that this film just suffered a lot. It suffered a lot from production and studio interference with the production, egos with the director, Josh Trank, coming off of the successfulness that Chronicle had. I think he was very much on a high pedestal for himself, and he just, very much disrespected a lot of people that were involved with this film. And I think, again, there was just a lot of studio interference that couldn't really come out with a good movie. If you guys have seen it or, want to see what I'm talking about, the last 2/3 of the movie just feels like such a disconnected movie. And it's just insane to me that they botched this that hard, especially coming out of the gate with that first 30-40 minutes being such a strong legs. They're strong legs for this movie. Showing body dysmorphia with the power set that the Fantastic Four have is a really great angle to approach, and you could really do a lot with that. And I think they just didn't realize the potential that they had. And also, Doctor Doom was absolute trash. And of course, I saved the best for last. We got 2022's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, another reboot attempt at this bullshit. There's been at least 4 since the Marcus Nispel 2003 version. There's been Texas Chainsaw Massacre: A New Beginning. There's also been Texas Chainsaw 3D. There's been Leatherface, and now coming in is Texas Chainsaw Massacre again with Netflix's version of 2022. Again, you're making a movie with characters that aren't likable, that we don't really give a shit for, and you're doing nonsensical plots that really don't interest anybody, and they go nowhere, and you're just doing it for the sake of filling in the movie. And like it's just it leaves a bad taste. It wasn't a great movie. Some of the kills, sure, they were really good and they were really cool to see, but that's not enough to save this film. And I think that Netflix needs to learn a thing or two, because this was absolute shit. It's so much to the point where I might make a separate video just discussing just how shit it is. Honorable mentions for the worst reboots possible is going to have to be Rob Zombie's Halloween. Just left a really bad taste in my mouth. Nothing great about these films. They're ugly to watch, ugly to even sit through, to be honest with you. And then of course I have here Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 2014. I think that was a very unsuccessful reboot. And my last honorable mention is going to be the opposite of my first pick for the top reboots that worked. It would be the reboot or attempted reboot of The Mummy, starring Tom Cruise and Sofia Boutella as the titular character, The Mummy. It was that bad of a reboot where it killed the potential franchise that it was trying to spawn off from this film. So, I mean, that in itself is worthy of being an honorable mention. So there are definitely way more reboots that did work, and there are a lot more reboots that didn't work. I just didn't mention all of them or every single one of them because I didn't want you guys sitting here for 30 minutes plus. I mean, that's how much there is here to go over. I just did my top picks for both sides, and I gave you guys 3 honorable mentions for each one. Now, a potential new video that will be coming out is reboots that could work. Some franchises that could actually benefit from a rebooted attempt at it. So be on the lookout for that video next. But back to this one. This was fun to make. I had a fun time picking these top 5s for each one. I wonder if you guys agree with me on those, and if not, you know, share with me your top 5 reboots that worked. Share with me your top 5 reboots that didn't work, or maybe mention something that I failed to mention, or maybe just didn't cover on this video. Nonetheless, it would be awesome to interact with you guys through the comments. Alright guys, that about wraps up this video. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.